Hi y'all. This is the video for the notes for today while you have a substitute. I'm going to skip a whole bunch of the words and that top left part of your notes page because those are things I would want to explain better in person. Instead, what I'm going to do is give you an abbreviated set of steps and then go straight to the exercise examples. Um, if you're still confused after the video, just go to the homework, try and do an easy problem or two, and know that when I'm back in class tomorrow, we are going to keep working on just this lesson with no new material, and I'll get you figured out tomorrow. So if it's all just crazy, just at least write the notes down, finish the video, and then get with me on Wednesday. I'm at a training this afternoon, and so that's where I am. I'm not like, getting my toes done or something, which wouldn't be bad. But anyway. So test on Friday, don't forget. This is the last new material before test day. We're spending Tuesday, Wednesday on this lesson, reviewing Thursday, and testing on Friday. This slide right here is one of the things I'm going to skip because I want to talk to you about it in person. These steps are all fine, some of it's kind of wordy and technical. So right here, what I want you to do instead is we're going to write down some abbreviated steps and then use them for the problems. So yesterday in class, we solved absolute value equations. And if you recall, our most basic form of that was this, absolute value of x equals 5. We made a positive version and a negative version by dropping the bars, leaving the stuff on the inside the same, and the constant on the right, which is 5, we made one equation where 5 was positive and one equation where 5 was negative. And we're going to do it the same thing today for inequalities with one additional step. So let's say instead of that equal sign, we had an inequality symbol. We're still going to make a positive version, which drops the bars and keeps everything else the same. But this time when we make a negative version, we're going to flip the symbol and then make the constant negative. So that's the main difference today. Flip the symbol when you make the negative version. And then you solve, and there's some other stuff we're going to have to do. So this was just sort of a basic intro. These are the abbreviated steps that I want you to write down on your notes page or on a piece of scratch paper or somewhere where you can reference it. Your first thing is to isolate absolute value. That means get it all by itself. The second thing is to drop the bars. And then make a positive and negative version of the inequality. Remembering to flip the symbol on the negative version. The next thing you're going to do is graph the solutions on a number line. On a number line. This will help us to write our answer in interval notation, which is the last step. Remember, interval notation is the easy one that you just use the number line to model. Like if it has parentheses, you write the parentheses. If it has a bracket, you write the bracket. Okay, so those are your abbreviated steps. It's pretty much what all the words on the other part of the front of your sheet say, but shorter. So pause it here if you need to continue copying that down. If not, this is where it goes straight to an example problem. So this one's the most basic one. The first step, isolate the absolute value, is already done. Okay. So the second step is drop the bars, make a plus or minus version. So my plus version, drop the bars, the inside stuff stays the same, x minus 2 less than or equal to 7, so everything else stays the same. In the negative version, you drop the bars, the inside stuff stays the same, the 7 becomes negative, and you flip the symbol. So it becomes greater than or equal to. Step 3 is to solve and graph. So solving the left one, I add 2 to both sides, x less than or equal to 9. The right one, add 2, x is greater than or equal to negative 5. And here it is on a number line. So here's my negative 5, here's my 9. On this left inequality, x less than or equal to 9, and the mouth is opening to the bigger value, pointing to the smaller. So I need all values less than 9 with a straight bracket because of the equal bar. And then for the second one, I need everything bigger than or equal to negative 5. So that's to the right of negative 5 and to the left of 9. And the last step is to write your final solution in interval notation. This red stuff is my final solution in picture form. And this is my final solution in interval notation. Remember, you just model it after what you see on the number line. And here's what's on the number line, a bracket. Negative 5 is the left endpoint, comma, 9 is the right endpoint with a bracket. And the lesson the lesson before yesterday's, or the last lesson, 2 lessons ago, was when we practiced graphing compound inequalities, which is what we have here. So if you need help figuring out how to graph that step, look at that lesson. All right, next one. All right, step 1, we isolate the absolute value. We start by subtracting 8. Next, we multiply by 4. Okay, this is step 1. Isolate the absolute value. Step 2 is to do your positive and negative versions. The positive one, you drop the bars, everything else stays the same. The negative one, you drop the bars, make the 4 negative, and flip the inequality symbol. Step 3 is to solve and graph on a number line. So minus 1, divide by 5. And the other inequality, minus 1, divide by 5. Here's the number line. There's no equal bar, so these get parentheses instead of straight brackets. I need everything to the left of 3/5 and to the right of negative 1. And the last step is to write it in interval notation. So it's all the values between negative 1 and 3/5. The variable is v, so v is an element of the interval negative 1 to 3/5 with parentheses. Negative 1 is your left endpoint, 3/5 is your right endpoint, and this notation also means everything in between. All right, this example, we start by isolating the variable. That means we add 2 to both sides. Then we divide by -3. When I divide by a negative number, I have to flip the sign, and I have the absolute value of m is less than -2. But this is where we have to be paying attention to what we've written. It can't be true that the absolute value of something is less than -2. Here's -2. Anything to the left of it is still negative. So it can't be true that the absolute value of m is less than -2. So this is an empty set. Again, like yesterday or the last week's lesson, because absolute value can't be negative. All right, these last 2 examples will work a little bit differently from the first 2. But their setup is the same. So we still begin. The first step is isolating the absolute value in this problem. That's done already. Second step is to make your positive version and your negative version. So drop the bars, leave it the same for the positive. Drop the bars, make it negative, flip the sign for the second version. Now we solve and graph. So I have -10 and 4. But for n greater than 4, that means everything to the right of 4 with a parenthesis because there's no equal bar. So that's this. And then the second inequality, n less than -10, it's everything smaller than -10 with a parenthesis. That's this way. So in this case, there's no overlapping. But both red pieces are still part of my solution for the original inequality. And so what are we going to do? What symbol or skill do we already have that joins things together? And it's the U symbol, right? We're joining all those numbers on the left red part with all the numbers on the right red part. Any number you pick from either section, if you plugged it back into the original inequality, would make it true. And here's how we will write that in interval notation. I'm going to start by n as an element of, and then I'll write one interval notation for this left interval. The left endpoint is -infinity. The right endpoint is -10 with a parenthesis. And I'm joining it with a U with this part of the number line, this red side. The left endpoint is 4 with a parenthesis, and the right endpoint is infinity. Infinity always gets a parenthesis. And last one. It's going to work like the previous one, just with more algebra. Step 1, isolate your absolute value. I begin by subtracting 9. Then divide by 3. There's the isolated absolute value. Now I move on to step 2. Make my positive and negative versions. positive version, I drop the bars and everything stays the same. For the negative version, I drop the bars, make the 2 a negative, and flip the symbol. And then step 3, solve and graph. So now I've got to solve for D. I begin by subtracting 5. Dividing by negative 7. When dividing by a negative number, you flip your symbol. So it becomes less than or equal to positive 3/7. On the right inequality, I subtract 5. Negative 70 is greater than or equal to negative 7. Divide by negative 7. So D is less than or equal to, I flipped the symbol because I divided by a negative 1. Sorry, I divided by a negative, pause, the answer is 1. I do not divide by negative 1. And then the number line. So I need to have everything less than 3/7 and less than or equal to 1. So 3/7 is here on the number line. 1 is over here. So less than or equal to 3/7 looks like this. I have a straight bracket and everything to the left. And then, oh wait, I feel like I did something wrong. Hold on. Oh, I flipped earlier than I was supposed to right here. So, sorry about that. I almost got through this whole video with no mistake. That's pretty good. So this was less than or equal to, and now that I divide by negative, I flip it. And so here, everything greater than or equal to 1. Okay. There's no overlap, so we're going to join these with a union and write it in interval notation, and that looks like this. D is an element of, and remember this needs to go in numerical order left to right, just like a number line. So I take this first interval, my left boundary is negative infinity, the right boundary is 3/7. So infinity always gets parentheses, but the 3/7 has a straight bracket. And then joined with this other piece over here, which is straight bracket, left endpoint is 1, comma, right endpoint is infinity. Okay. I will have your homework keys in the classroom. Do your best with everything. Get help with friends. Write down the notes. I'll be at school in the morning and at school tomorrow on Wednesday to answer any of your questions. All right, see y'all then.